1 game, 2 hours. Hook me. 3000th DUEL. Welcome folks to another episode of Hook Me, and this time we're looking at 3000th DUEL. Repeating that title over and over again is gonna be a challenge, but we'll see what comes of it. So, first things first, who is it from? This is being brought to you by NeopopcornCorp, and it was kind of hard to find information on those guys, so take what I say here with a grain of salt, as I might be incorrect. Their Twitter account linked to an old website that was down, and the only website that I did find had very limited information. They seem to be a somewhat smaller Korean-based company, and from what I could tell, 3000th DUEL is their first actual game. But what the hell is it? It's probably best described as a Souls-like Metroidvania style game. If I'd want to cut this short, I'd say if you know Salt and Sanctuary, it's basically that, but a little worse. That's it, that's the video. But I guess we should probably be going into a little more detail. But where do I even start with this one? Well, I guess a term definition might not hurt. I assume most of you are familiar with the term Metroidvania, but in case you're not, the term is basically a mixture between Metroid and the Castlevania games. So they are basically kind of side-scrolling platformers with a large interconnected map that will often have parts of it cut off by obstacles or barricades, and usually you will then need to kill a certain boss or backtrack to find a special key to unlock that new part of the map. So the core principle should be pretty clear. Run from screen to screen, kill enemies, get blocked by a barricade, backtrack, find a key or kill a boss, and progress further. But I also mentioned that it's a Souls-like, because there's a lot of features that will remind you of Dark Souls if you've played that. For example, a limited amount of health potions that refills whenever you save. So in Dark Souls you have Estus flasks that get refilled once you rest at a bonfire. Here you have Violet Scriptures that get refilled once you get to a save point. Additionally, when you kill an enemy, you will gain Karma, which is the equivalent to Souls in Dark Souls. Much like Souls, Karma can be used to increase your HP, strength, mana points, or stamina, which will also increase your character's level. When you die, you will lose all the Karma that you have acquired, but if you backtrack to the place of your demise, you can regain it. However, unlike the Souls series, here you don't just have to go and pick it up, it'll form a tiny orb that attacks you. This is actually kind of interesting because if you die on a boss fight, not only will you have to fight the boss, but also your previous karma. It's fairly easy to defeat, but it often makes you reconsider your movement or positioning. And since I've already dabbled into combat now, I guess we might as well take a closer look at it right away. So the combat in 3000th DUEL was a very mixed bag to me. There's a lot of good stuff to be found here, but a few very impactful bad things as well. Generally, you will have 3 types of weapons. Blade-based ones that allow for fast attack speed, sword-based ones that deal a ton of damage, and lance-based ones that naturally have a very long reach. And especially the heavy sword-based ones feel absolutely incredible. There's a lot of wind up to each attack, and when you smash them into the ground, they really feel like they have an impact. They feel heavy. That is awesome. The blade-based ones didn't particularly stand out, but I thought they were okay, and the lances just felt surprisingly unintuitive. But the main problem I had with the melee combat was that for sword and blade-based weapons, your standard combo consists of only 2 attacks. So you will have 2 attacks and the animation will restart. And the transition from the first tiny combo into the second one just doesn't feel fluid at all. So you have this very short combo string that gets repeated over and over, and whenever it does, it just feels awkward and unintuitive. And so the base combos also didn't really have any variety. The only thing that you could do is after your base combo trigger a skill. But you can only use a skill when you have a full mana bar, which doesn't happen very often because it doesn't regenerate naturally, it fills up by hitting and defeating enemies. Therefore, only ever so often could you prolong that awkward base combo string. Speaking of skills, there's quite a variety of them and you unlock them by finding them within the world. However, in my first 2 hours of play, I did not find any combo extending skills that did not take the full mana bar to use. And whenever you level up, you will unlock seal breaker stones that will allow you to enhance any given skill. These are for the most part passive upgrades, and in the first 2 hours I could unlock pretty much all of them, but it's still a nice addition that brings an extra sense of progress. Beyond basic attacks and your main damage skill, you will also unlock Occult Devotion, which is basically spells. Let's be real here, it's spells. Much like Dark Souls, you have a certain amount of spell slots that you can use that get refilled whenever you get to a save point. And lastly, of course, you have your iframe move, which is a quick dash that lets you phase through enemies. So the combat does have some variety and gives you options, but the core of it just feels clunky and awkward, which to me was a pretty big deal. Before we get to the more unimportant topics, let's talk about the second big thing in Metroidvania games, which is the platforming and general map traversal. The platforming itself is done pretty well, the controls are very responsive, and when you mess up, you feel like it was your own fault, you don't feel cheated by the game. And additionally, there are a lot of mechanics to vary the platforming up, such as a ground that will move in order to slow you down or speed you up, platforms that disappear, enemies patrolling along the outside of an object, passages that will require you to air dash, occasional puzzles, yada yada yada. There's a lot of variety here, and if you're into platforming, I'd say it's done pretty well. Next, let me just get the story over with, because I was incredibly underwhelmed by it. As far as I understood it, you've lost your memory and your face is covered with a mask that you've never seen, and that's pretty much it. You try to find out why. You're also being followed by a wolf for some reason. The problem is the way it's presented. It's just so boring. The NPCs aren't interesting. There's no voice acting. There's no mysterious music engaging you. All you get is a little text on the screen and occasionally a mediocre cutscene. It might pick up as the game progresses, but so far it hasn't intrigued me at all. And as for the graphics, well, you can see them on screen now. They're certainly a little outdated, though I don't think it really holds the game back in any way. I feel like Metroidvanias don't need to have amazing graphics. The important thing is that platforms and enemies are easily distinguishable from the background, and I haven't run into any problems in that area. As for the design overall, the sub-areas or biomes that you get to in and of themselves are fairly interesting, but basically once you've seen one screen, you've seen the whole thing. So I wouldn't necessarily give it an award for originality. And with that, I think we have all the important aspects covered. So did it hook me? No, not at all, really. Everything that could have potentially made me want to play more of it was just not quite there. The combat is done reasonably well, but at its core it doesn't feel fluid and intuitive. The Souls-like aspects of it are nice, but I feel the game is just not leaning into it quite enough. For example, the first 4 bosses had very limited attack patterns and were just a little bit too easy to figure out. And the regular enemies that you encounter within the map, you can usually just dash through, hit them from behind a bit and they're done. And there's no difficulty setting to speak of. Now this of course may get better as the game progresses, but with something like Dark Souls, at least the first time I played it, I immediately felt challenged and I immediately wanted to get better. That didn't really happen here. And the story to me so far was just piss poor. So, not for me, but would I recommend it? Well, if you haven't played Salt and Sanctuary yet, I would probably recommend you get that. But if you're dying for a new Metroidvania game, there's certainly worse ones out there. And the Souls-like aspects are somewhat intriguing. Additionally, it's fairly reasonably priced. So if you're a fan of the genre, it's probably worth checking out. What's reasonably priced? Reasonably priced is $12.49 if you're in Europe, or $14.99 if you're in the US. As always, prices may vary depending on your exact location. And before I forget to mention it, there is also the Wise Ones DLC already available for free, which will add a whole bunch of new regions, equipment and spells, and a new Game Plus mode. So you know what? Maybe do check it out. The developer seems to really be trying here, and adding such a huge DLC for free is really pro-consumer, which I'm a big fan of. So it didn't hook me, but I've definitely played worse. And that's it for this episode and 3000th Duel. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, please leave a like or a dislike depending on how you felt about the whole video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.